So yeah, you're very welcome. Lovely to see you all. It's been a while since we've had one of these Friday night interviews, and I'm really, really delighted that Vajrashura is with us here tonight. I'm actually at the Dublin Buddhist Centre. He's at home in the men's community where Prasanna Deva is, and probably Stephen as well, are you? Yeah, yeah. Lovely. And we thought even though we could have sat opposite each other, we thought because we're all online, it'd probably be better if we were looking at our cameras because that's what you're going to be looking at. So anyway, you're very, very welcome. And what I'm going to do, what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to talk to Vajrashura for a little while about what it was like to be in Gikuloka and what it was like to ordain some men into our order. And then after that, there'll be a break, and then there'll be an opportunity for you all to ask any questions that you might have. And then in the second half of the evening, we're going to have some meditation. So you're welcome to stay for the meditation, or you can leave if you wish. So yeah, just to let you know, we'll be finished up around 9. Yeah, so you can stay down for the meditation if you wish. And I've got the pleasure now of introducing Vajrashura. It's not something I get to do in a kind of formal way all that often. I had to check up on my facts. But anyway, he is from Ballinasloe. I did know that. And he got involved with Triratna in 1999. So what's that? It's 23 years ago. And when he was at Trinity College and he was studying theoretical physics at the tender age of 22, which when he came along and started to meditate. There was a Buddhist group at Trinity. And he started actually working for the Dublin Buddhist Centre in September of 2002, so not that long afterwards. So Karuna Daka, who was the chair of the Buddhist Centre, spotted a bit of talent, and because of that, we have Vajrashura, well, in large part anyway. And he was ordained not that long afterwards in 2007 by Kulananda and Sadaloka. And the whole time, actually, since he's actually, both of us just clocked the fact that this year he would have been working for the Buddhist Centre in Dublin for 20 years. And about 12 or 13 years ago, he became the men's Mitra Convener in Dublin. And in 2018, he became a private preceptor, and he ordained Jayasagara shortly afterwards. And just last year, the year before last, in 2020, he became a public preceptor. So if you're not sure what that means, we'll find out shortly. So there's a lot more I could say about things he's been involved in, different projects and different responsibilities that he holds. But I could be here all night, actually. There's a lot I could say. And there's also a lot I could say about his qualities. So Vajrashura is a man with many qualities. And one of the ones I particularly want to pick up on tonight is his aptitude. He's got an amazing capacity to learn new skills and to pick up new skills. And I've seen him do this over the last 14 years that we've been working very closely together. If he doesn't know how to do something, he'll just figure out how to do it, and then he'll be able to do it. It's quite an amazing quality. He has a confidence just to turn his mind to something that he doesn't understand yet, and a kind of a ready intelligence to pick it up. And as well as that, I think, or as part of that, or what enables that even, is a courage. He's quite willing to move into areas of, or unknown areas in his life. He's very much a courageous man. So his name actually means adamantine hero, or diamond hero. And it's a very apt name because of all sorts of reasons, but particularly this quality of courage, a kind of intrepidity. He's quite happy to move into the unknown. And last year, he did just that by leading a retreat, leading an ordination retreat, which was partly at Pamaloka and partly at Kukuloka, where 16 men were ordained into the Triratna Buddhist order. So without further ado, I just want to ask you, Vajrashura, what was it like going on this retreat? I know it was a bit more complex, wasn't it, than it normally would be, something like that. this at this time?
Yeah, I guess not to replay COVID traumas too much, but it was at the height. It was a whole year of will it happen, won't it happen? So I think my overwhelming experience of good treat initially was just one of complete relief that it was finally happening, because as you probably know, like I'd lived with Prasanna Deva and Varabandhu the whole previous year of their course being cancelled and having been put back and shortened, and we'd even decided at one point to cancel the Guhyaloka part of the retreat, which was almost 3 months, and then we decided to have a month, and then we just decided to go ahead with it. So to answer your question, the very first experience I had was just one of real relief that we're all there, and we all arrived in Pavan, and so that was my first experience. Do you mean more generally as well, Ninadara, or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, you've talked a little bit about the uncertainty of it, but like you're going up a mountain for 3 months essentially, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, we were 2 weeks in Padmaloka first of all, which is in Norfolk, which is like the least mountainous part of the universe. It's but it was going off on retreat and going offline and leaving the world, and I was a bit nervous going there because, like many of you, I hadn't been away at all in the last, 18 months or something in lockdown. And what was heartening, and maybe this is good to say now, timely to say now, is that it was just so easy to slot back to being on retreat with people. It was so nice just to be with people on retreat again. All my nerves just disappeared as soon as I got there. And then for the next 3 months, it was just like you're just living. There was God, it must have been about 30 of us in Padmaloka with the private preceptors, and then 22 in Guhyaloka. And it was just a real delight, actually, I have to say. I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. It wasn't without its challenges. Being on retreat has its challenges, and you're looking out for people a lot, and I think I did allow myself to after the 2 weeks in Guhyaloka, when we were traveling, I phoned Sadayasi and my mum just to say hello. And Sadayasi was asking, will I get a day off now after doing the 2 weeks in Padmaloka? And I was saying, yeah, I think I have a day off in November. This is August. I had a full, almost 3 months of retreat left to lead, where I'm up front leading it every single day. Just let it do every single night for 3 months, basically.
Wow.
For example.
So I might ask you a little bit about that later on, but right now, I thought it might be nice just for people to orientate themselves a little bit. You've got a few photos for us of Padmaloka and Guhyaloka, so maybe you could show us those and just talk us through them a bit.
Yeah. So, sorry, something's after happening to my. Just give me 1 second to get them open again.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay. Sorry, something happened there and it closed. So if you'll bear with me with my holiday snaps, so to speak, my retreat snaps. So we started off, you can see that okay for some of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Padmaloka. So this is the stupa outside the shrine room in Padmaloka. Anyone who's been there will notice it's a kind of one of the central points in Padmaloka. And there's actually relics of one of Bante's teachers in that stupa. And so this was kind of decorated out, and in here was the shrine room. So this is an amazing Padmaloka shrine room, and these were the robes of all the men being ordained that we'd laid out as part of on the first night for them to, they ritually put them on. Then these are the order robes that they would have worn. I'm not going to dwell on these too long. A lot of this will come out in the questions again, won't it, Ninadara? So I'm just going to fly through these, just to give a flavor. This is in my room. So this is an ordination vow that was given to me by the Irish Order. I'm the first Irish public preceptor, and so it felt very appropriate. It was Pavar's idea for the order to buy this vase, which is used in the ceremony. We'll see it in a few minutes, but it's a very important tool as part of the thing. And I think it's quite significant. I wanted to show you this because I don't feel like I own this. This belongs to the Irish Order, you could say. And I hope that there's many public preceptors in Ireland in the future who will also use this vase. I think that's part of the reason why I was really happy to do this role, is just for the development of the Dharma and the order in Ireland. So I think for me, the vase there is very, very significant. It did have a leak, so I had to be very careful with it, and left it in Padmaloka to be fixed, but hopefully that's okay. And this is me using it then on a man called, at the time he was called Tony. He became Stira Mitra, and pouring the water as part of the ceremony on his head during the public ordination, as part of the purification that goes on at ordination, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And this is probably the moment of most relief for me, where finally, after almost 2 weeks of quite an intense retreat, I put the first case around my first man's neck, and this is him the moment he joined the order. So what you see in my face there, what you see in his face is probably delight. What you see in my face is relief and delight and wondering how to put the case on over his ponytail. That was what was going through. I'm wishing I could have cut it off beforehand, but there he is. He's a lovely man apart from that. And he became Stira Mitra, which means steadfast friend. And these are the 6 guys that I ordained publicly then. There's 3 from the London Buddhist Centre, there's 1 from Froome, 1 from Stockholm in Sweden, and 1 from Danakosha Retreat Centre. So yeah, this is afterwards, all looking very happy and relieved. Just entered the order. And then this is the whole of the Padmaloka retreat. So this includes the private preceptors, which I can explain in a few minutes, and all of us on the team, and the new ordinees. And then we went to Guhiloka. So this is Guhiloka Valley. And
so where's that in Vajrashura?
Sorry?
Whereabouts is Guhiloka? It's obviously not England.
Yeah, so Guhiloka. So if you see me, this is me looking down on the Guhiloka Valley. So if you look at the sea in the background, and you can see these kind of juts of land there, I don't know how good your internet connection is. Well, that's Alicante down there on the coast. Yeah. And at night, you could walk down the valley after the puja, feeling all spiritual, and look down at Alicante lights and ask yourself the question every night, would I rather be here in the valley or down at Alicante? So that's roughly where it is in Spain. It's in the, I can't remember the province, Valencia. Do you remember the name of it, Neil?
I can't remember, sorry.
Yeah, but it's the nearest one is Benidorm is the other side of that mountain as well, which is a horrible. I'm sure some of you have been to Benidorm. It's like the Costa del Sol at its worst. But anyways, this is the mountain valley, and the retreat center is somewhere up in the trees there. You can't quite see it from here. So you're living in a mountain valley for almost 3 months then. This is me at the top of a cliff looking down over the retreat center. So we were living in very basic huts like this. This was our retreat center. These are some of the huts that we used to live in. There would usually be 2 people to a hut. The team had their own. So this was my hut. This was one of the better huts. And this is the Amitabha hut that I spent 3 months in. And we had solar panels, so there was a certain amount of light in the evenings until the batteries ran out. Mostly they didn't, but sometimes they did. And that was it, no power then. And this was inside. This was me unpacking, and you can see my robes there and all my various things, my clothing. This is the shrine room. So the shrine room was its own building, and there was a beautiful shrine in there that you could see there. And that's actually from my own ordination retreat, just because it's a better shot than I had. I'm not going to stay too long on these because I don't want to bore you with them, but this is the Ordination Stupa where I got ordained in, and Dayasagra got privately ordained in. We didn't use it this time because I should say that we had the ordinations in Padmaloka because it was a lot less work with COVID restrictions to get all the preceptors there and do it there than to fly them all over to Spain as well. So normally it would all happen in Spain, but that's why we had the first 2 weeks in Padmaloka. So that stupa is just in the middle of the forest, and you walk down to it. And this is a typical shot. You might need to move your little floating window, but this is on my retreat, actually, my ordination retreat back in 2007. And this is the kind of a typical study group where, well, this is actually us listening to a talk, but you're literally sitting in the forest. You're living in the forest, in your robes, living in the wild, living in the open. You can see Sangashura up there at the back, for those of you sharp-eyed on the left, lounging in his chair. This is our dining area, so you really do get a feel for the wildness of it. You're eating all your meals there. The one exception is when it's horizontal rain, you kind of nip inside to the small little room, but there you go. You're outside all the time. This is from my retreat. This is us at lunch. These are the yogis, I think, after having done yoga together. Washing up, yeah, there's a lot of washing up on the retreat. This is us towards the end. This is the team. So there was 4 of us on the team. Padmasagara is on the left. That's me. That's Sat, if you know him, and Maitra Raja. And at the end, this is in November at this stage, so it was absolutely freezing at this stage. You really noticed how cold it got when the sun wasn't around. and warm enough during the day, but freezing cold at night. And it was a lovely night where the team all rejoiced, where the rest of them all rejoiced in us and everything. And we're having a great time, but we're also absolutely frozen. And I have almost every stitch of clothing I have with me on as well. And as November went on, you got these amazing sunsets. So that was our vision by the end. And at 6 p.m. every evening on the dot, there'd be like 12 people out watching the sunset in the evening, and sitting on rocks looking really spiritual and stuff like that. And but it was incredibly beautiful, a place. That is one of the main things about Gukilokha. It is incredibly beautiful. That's a Kashaja. If some of you lives in Padmaloka, some of you might know him. And this was all of us at the end, and a very motley crew by the end. Sunned, tanned, slimmed. You'll notice I'm a lot slimmer there than I was in the Padmaloka shots at the start, and kind of rough and ready, but very happy looking as well. Everyone's very, very happy. So this is like 3 days before the end or something like that. And very good bunch of men, I have to say. Very, very good bunch of men. And so there's 4 of us on the team. There was 16 men ordained in Padmaloka. There was 1 man ordained in Germany because he couldn't get to the UK easily because of COVID. And there was 1 man in Mexico at the start of the year who joined us then on that retreat. So there was 22 of us in total, completely living in each other's pockets, completely cut off from the outside world, and just getting to know each other really, really well. And then this is me on the way back. Ironically, on the day that's in it, listening to Meatloaf on the radio and ABBA and all these other songs. It was very surreal coming from that to listening to Doing Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That on the way back to the airport. So we're all very happy to be getting out of there, as well as having had a really good retreat.
And maybe you could say, so the ordinations have taken place, and actually maybe just before I ask you that, just one of the things that struck me when you were describing the retreat is just how diverse a range of men were there. You had guys, well, you tell us a little bit about just where everyone was from and what it was like to be with people from all different backgrounds.
Yeah. So it's always different every year, but this year we had quite a few people from the UK, which is kind of to be expected. And there was quite a few Scottish people, actually. I think there's been 15 ordinations in Scotland last year between the men and the women. So the Scottish Sangha is really booming. And then there was people from all over the UK. There was 2 people from Sweden. So one of them he became the youngest order member. He's only 21, or 22, I can't quite remember, which is astonishing to me that someone that young could be so integrated. I mean, I feel like he's more integrated than I am, and I'm 44. But a lovely, lovely young man. And he lives in Padmaloka, but is from Sweden. And there was another man from Sweden as well, from Stockholm. There was a man from Poland, a man from Germany, a man from Barcelona. He was Catalan rather than Spanish.
Okay.
And he got to chant the refuges and precepts in Catalan at his public ordination. There was someone from Mexico, very nice young man called Mokshirati, who was the previous youngest order member, and he got overtaken then. And there was a man from America who was living in Glasgow, and he was a fascinating character. The youngest was 21 or 22, and the oldest, he was 78. And he was telling me his life story. He was indicted by the House Committee on Un-American Activities back in the day, McCarthy's committee, for helping people dodge the draft, and he had to leave the country under fear of arrest. And he moved to Paris and married a French woman so that he could escape the United States. And he would have been arrested had he gone back to America till the early 1980s, when Carter pardoned them all. So he was quite a character as well,
And so you've got all these disparate people from different backgrounds, different ages, and yet they're all there to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So can you say a little bit more about what that thing is that they're there to do?
Yeah. So I'm sure we've all seen in our Sangha in Dublin that one of the things that I've always been struck by is that I'm friends with people in the Sangha here that I would never choose to hang out with. It's not that there's anything wrong with them, but I just think, even just in terms of age and different backgrounds and everything, you wouldn't interact with them very much under normal circumstances. But because we're all going for refuge together, we can all be friends together. And in a way, that's what the course was like even more, that it didn't, in a way, the more diverse it was, the better in some ways, but because it just emphasized that what we all have in common is going for refuge. What we all have is we really want to live a life based upon Bante's teachings and our system of practice, and practicing in the same way. We're not just Buddhists together, but we're all really happily practicing within the same tradition as well. And that was just such a unifying factor. I mean, I've been on 4 ordination retreats now, my own Diasagara's. I did one 2 years ago as well, 2 or 3 years ago now, and this one. And I have to say, they just keep getting more harmonious every time I go on them. I think and this was so harmonious and so deep together. We're all just rowing in the one direction. There's a unity that comes out of all practicing together in the same way. That's very hard to describe, but that really was it. It didn't matter that we're all from different backgrounds. In fact, it's so enjoyable. It's enjoyable the more difference there is in some ways, and it highlights the unity as well that happens. I can't hear you. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. Not quite sure what happened there. Was there particular moments when you just when the penny dropped a little bit about what the deeper significance? Because I mean, many of us will have heard the phrase, a shared practice based on going for refuge. And were there moments on the retreats, if you can call it, or the retreat, where it just became a little bit clearer what was really going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Padmaloka is quite significant because that's when the ordinations were, and I think at the heart of an ordination, be you being the one being ordained, or be you being a public preceptor or a private preceptor, is the witnessing aspect. What you're doing. I was revisiting this earlier in my mind, and just I think what happens at ordination, it's like at ordination, it's like all the efforts that you've been making for a number of years just comes together in this one kind of, it's almost like a black hole. It's just an intense pressure in a very positive sense. And everything kind of narrows down to this one moment of the private ordination, the public ordination. And as that happens, your normal sense of you is somewhat made transparent and something else shines through. But equally important is the witnessing of that by others. It kind of forms the container for that to hold that in a strange kind of way. And you can only really witness if you're simpatico, you know what I mean? If you have the same language, you have the same way of looking at things. And so I think that was a moment of deeper appreciation, that's why we put so much emphasis on being deeply unified and in harmony with each other and speaking the same language, so that we can really witness each other's practice. And I think that's probably true throughout our Sangha. You have that, but at ordination, it's a very particular moment of that. And particularly as a private and public preceptor, that's what it is. Literally, that's all it is. You're witnessing someone really practicing in the way that you are, So it's a very hard thing to pin down. I think that's the best answer I can give in that regard. I'm happy to be drawn out more, maybe. Yeah.
Well, maybe in a way you've said it. Maybe it's one of those things that you can't say more about. It's just, but you did say something. Well, there's a picture of you pouring water onto Sterinaga. Was it
Steromitra? Yeah.
Sterimitra's head.
Yeah.
So what was all that about?
Yeah. So there's loads of emphasis in the ordination and throughout Buddhism actually on purification, and we don't talk about purification very much, I think, generally, and I think that's maybe because it has connotations of Judeo-Christian ethics, or morality, particularly around sex, but Buddhism has always placed an emphasis on purification and purity, and it really means purity in the sense that of all contaminations removed. It's a very simplistic comparison, but you talk about pure orange juice. So there's a difference between pure orange juice and orange drink. You know what I mean? Or pure spring water. You know what I mean? So it's not that it's you're pure of greed, hatred, and delusion, basically. So purity, and this again was a real learning. I've heard all this before, but I think having to lead the retreat, you have to really think about it. And this is why Padmaloka I thought was very significant for me, as well as the guys being ordained. I just had to really see that what you're really trying to do is be as basically not let anything get in the way of you experiencing the fullness of the ordination. And what gets in the way is your own kind of greed, hatred, and delusion, basically, to put it very generally.
So what do you do? What do you do about that when it arises? So you're on this retreat. In a way, for you, I mean, it's obviously a bit of a pressure cooker for the
Oh yeah.
guys who are getting ordained. But for you, I imagine it was a bit of a pressure cooker as well, maybe more so, perhaps. So
Yeah,
what do you do when you?
it's definitely where I definitely a few times in the retreat thought, I'm so glad I'm not getting ordained again. It's so intense. It's intensely positive. It's really, really positive. But it's second time around, it's much nicer being on the team than being ordained, because you can actually kind of, I don't know, you can kind of see what's going on. You're not so caught up in it, you know. But I'll come back to answer about the ordination vows in a minute as well. I haven't forgotten that. But what you do is you basically you communicate. So on the ordination retreat, if you're being ordained, you spend lots and lots of time with your private preceptor, who you have a very personal connection with, and they're literally spending 6-7 hours a day with you. You know what I mean? Chatting to you sometimes. It depends how everyone does it a bit differently. And one of the things people did was tell life stories, get any regrets they have out there so they can let go of them. One of the things it reminded me of is I remember my uncle dying years ago, and as he was on his deathbed, he called for my dad, who, you know, we were neighbors, and my dad went up to visit him, and they went into a room together and closed the door, and nobody knew what they talked about. But my dad kind of intimated afterwards that it was my uncle unburdening all these regrets that he had in his life, because he wanted to be unburdened to die, you know. And I think it's a very direct, well, I think it's almost exactly the same thing in some ways with the ordination. You want to be as free as possible, as pure as possible, with no regrets, so that you can go into the ordination experience and really just die, spiritually speaking, instead of physically, you know.
Yeah.
Let go fully of your old identity and allow something new to emerge. And the reason there's the emphasis on purity, because another way of looking at purity is that you've nothing holding you back to get in the way of that dying process, so you can really just give yourself fully. It's like if you met a friend and you were aware that you'd been kind of gossiping about them an hour earlier, you kind of be hard to then fully engage and fully love that person. You know, you have that awareness in your mind. So it's a bit like that in life. Maybe you'd have to let go of things you regret. And I think ethical actions, skillful and unskillful, leave their marks that have to be, particularly unskillfulness. You know, you have to confess it often to let go of it.
And you mentioned how, you know, growing up with a Catholic conditioning, that even the notion of purification could be slightly problematic.
Yeah.
So could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, maybe you escaped this a bit more in New Zealand, but like certainly in Ireland, growing up, you know, I remember my cousin telling me this story about how another cousin had gone into their house, and he said, he made a joke. He said, "What's this?" And I said, "It's Bosco in the news." And it was a really bad joke, but it really didn't go down well, because they were all like, my auntie was like really staunch Catholic, and it was just so out of color to make a remark like that. So that's the kind of, you know, staunch moralistic purity that's just so unhelpful and unhealthy. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm not saying this is. You know, there's a certain kind of attitude, particularly around sex and things like that, that people were terrified of and you couldn't go into, and it was sullying, and Buddhism just doesn't relate to things like that, you know.
But did that affect your background? Did that affect the way that you approached those kinds of ideas when you encountered them in Buddhism?
Yeah. I remember being in a study group years ago in the Mitra conveners of Bhante, and we were lucky enough to study at Bhante, and he was saying, I think we need to talk about purification more. I think we need to talk about purity more, actually. Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, oh, not sure how that'll go down in Ireland. You know what I mean? So you have to be very, very careful how to put it, actually, because I think we just hear, you know, we just get into judgment then, particularly of ourselves, if we get into kind of the old school moralistic purity that we're conditioned by, you know.
So you've spoken about purification, and you've spoken about this idea or this process of sort of consciously dying, or consciously and deliberately letting go.
Yeah.
And then there is also the element of rebirth, isn't there, which is so much part of the ordination. So
yeah, exactly.
Did you kind of see that? Was that apparent to you as you were entering into that period of the retreat?
Yeah. I mean, like, Yeah, no, I saw it very vividly because I think I felt like one of the had to do leading the retreat and with the team as well, would just kind of hold a space for people to feel like they could just completely fall apart in some ways, in a very positive sense, like letting go of their old identities. And it really did feel like something new emerged in the ordinations. And we had one of the things we did normally, the ordinations would happen a month into the retreat or 2 months into the longer retreat. So one of the things we did do is we were checking in a lot as a group, just the men being ordained in the team. And I'd have to say one of the high points of the retreat was they couldn't really say much about the private ordination because they weren't allowed to say their name between the private and the public ordination. But we had just around all of us sitting in a circle talking about it. And there was something else at work in the room. There's just something new coming into being that was magical. All of us talked about it afterwards. People were just going around, and there was just a feeling of something magical going on, like really, really deeply magical happening that came out of the public ordination as well. But so I could definitely see these new beings being born. You know what I mean? In a certain way. And I remember my own ordination. I'm sure you were the same, Dara. Like I walked into that stupa that I showed you a few minutes ago, and I feel like a different person did walk out of that. You walk into the tiger's cave, and if that's terrifying for you, it is a bit terrifying actually. And the Dharma is slightly terrifying. And that's what's going to happen on any retreat to a certain degree, but particularly at ordination.
And did you have people, I don't know, like freaking out and melting down and like running for the hills? I suppose you're already in the hills. It's probably more like running.
Well, we're in the flats actually. You remember in Pamaloka?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't just mean at Pamaloka. I mean even at Gukuloka for the.
Oh yeah.
For the
Okay. Yeah. I think it wasn't so bad once we got to Gukuloka. I think some people did have challenges in Gukuloka, and some people, I think the most intense time for everyone was Padmaloka, because the ordinations, it's just like, I don't know, the universe kind of weighs in, I think, at ordination. That's the only way I can put it, really. Something else goes on of universal significance. Like at my own ordination, I really did feel like the universe was alive to the significance of what was happening. That's the only way I can put it. That something big, far vaster than I could ever get my head around was at work, and I think they all experienced it as well. So I think they all had a meltdown in a certain kind of way,
yeah, right.
But they might not have freaked out particularly, although I think they all had deep wobbles. And one of my main jobs, and I said it again and again and again and again and again, was like, just trust the retreat. Just give yourself to the retreat. You've done all the work you need to do. You've put in years of effort, most of you, to get here. Just trust. You just don't have to do anything at all. Actually, just let go into the retreat. That's all you need to do. And I think they appreciated that. Yeah. And maybe I could say that was one of the main challenges as well. That like I've never led the team before. I have been on a team, and the biggest challenge of the whole 3 months was just the fact that you really had to hold that space very carefully, because any misstep could have had huge consequences in terms of like the psyches of the guys, what they were going through.
Yeah.
So I want to emphasize that this is all really positive, by the way, just in case.
Yeah. So maybe you could say like what was it? You've talked about the challenges for you and the challenges for others, but what were the enjoyable parts? What were the inspirational parts of the retreat for you? Maybe you could just say for yourself.
Yeah. I think in Padmaloka, it was all like, again, it's also like the first time you do something, you're always a bit hyper alert. So I did enjoy it. It was significant, I thought, in Padmaloka, but I did feel a lot of relief once the ordinations were done. And it wasn't that I was stressed as such, but I was on high alert in a way, But once I got to Gukuloka, I've been to Gukuloka a lot now. I think I've spent over a year now in Gukuloka of my life, which isn't insignificant. And I think, and this was true in Padmaloka as well. But I think the main thing I really enjoyed is just the sense of beauty, and we emphasized as well, just like we were looking at Bantu stuff quite a bit about beauty as a pathway in itself. That beauty is can be the context for the whole of the Dharma life, actually. And what we were doing was that spiritual friendship between us was really beautiful, and Padmaloka was really beautiful. But for me, I think getting to Gukuloka, it's just such a beautiful place. It's just so beautiful. And I'm used to it now. I love going back there. And there's a simplicity there of life. And it's just and everything's just really immediate. And so I just love the beauty of Bihiloka. Perhaps my favorite moments throughout the retreat were you'd get up and you'd meditate in the morning, do a double or triple sit, and then you'd have breakfast. And after breakfast, I'd take my pot of tea down and I'd just sit outside my hut for about 40 minutes and just look at the cliffs and look at the sun coming down the cliffs if it was later in the retreat, or look at the trees swaying in the wind and just sit there. And you could do that because you're on a long retreat and you'd built up momentum. And I have to say, I was never as happy as just those periods after breakfast where, some of it involved, the caffeine high of my pot of Darjeeling, but it was also just the beauty of it. And that was perhaps the high points of it for me, just the simplicity of sitting there, not having to do anything or be anyone. There's also the beauty of friendship and connection as well. That was really great.
Because you're working quite closely with, there's 4 of you leading the retreat. You're the kind of overall leader, and you've got 3 other guys who are kind of looking out for everybody else. They've been ordained for some time. And what was that like? I mean, I imagine that was quite intense at times. And
I shouldn't give the impression it was just me leading it. So it was the three guys, and Satyaraja in particular was on the team, and he like trained me. He helped me in my training for ordination back in the 2000s. So he's been around a long time. And in a way, I was kind of doing my apprenticeship to him. He was there to support me in training up to do these things. But it was a great team. I mean, we had 1 or 2 meetings where we had to kind of sort out our communication. Some of us were getting a bit too rambunctious maybe, or high energy, and the other, kind of joking about things, and another person had to pull us up on it and things like that. But on the whole, the team was very, very harmonious, and even that was really good as well. And we really loved each other, actually. I think that was the thing. We really looked out for each other. And when you're leading something like that as a team, you kind of really have to look out for each other, because you get from the other team members what you then give to the retreatants, if you see what I mean. And so it brought us very, very close indeed. And I feel like, particularly with Padmasagara and Sad, I knew them already, but I've made really lifelong friends there. And, it's forged in, the fire is probably too dramatic, because it was a very good retreat, but certainly in the running of the retreat together, we spent a lot of time together. Every evening throughout the retreat, we spent 40 minutes in a meeting together, checking in, and every week we'd have a chapter together, confessing, and just got to know each other very, very, very well. Yeah, and we had a great laugh. I mean, the guys on the retreat just hear us howling with laughter all across the retreat center. And Satyaraja used to joke that if the team are happy, if they can hear Mammy and Daddy laughing, they know everything is okay. He was joking, obviously, about that. But when you can hear the team laughing, you know that they're well, and I think it's good. But we were just having such a laugh on the team. It was really, really good in a really positive sense.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so, what was it like, kind of coming back to Dublin after all of that?
Yeah,
been back a couple of months now, I think.
Yeah, back almost like the months. Like Bihiloka was wonderful. I love Bihiloka, and I think everyone really enjoyed it. And I'm sure there wasn't a single person there who didn't miss something every day. You know what I mean? And certainly, I think I was better this time than previous times, but I did still think a lot about coming home and missing comforts and missing people and missing, I don't know, being able to go down and have a coffee in the shop or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, when you come back and you do those things, then they're all a bit disappointing, actually. But there you go. But coming back was surreal. And I remember one thing that we did at the end is, like, we were very cut off from the world. I mean, if anything really bad had happened, they probably would have told the team, But 3 days before the end, they told us the news. And there wasn't loads of news, but it was like, oh yeah, and COVID numbers are still at this level. And we were all like, oh God, COVID, because we hadn't, once or twice people had to go out to the dentist or something like that. And one person had to be brought to the doctor one time. So apart from that, we didn't have to think about COVID at all. And then it was like, oh, and I think all of us were realizing we were really hoping that COVID would have gone away while we're on retreat, very naively. So I think we were all a bit depressed, actually, when we heard about COVID still being around for 2 or 3 hours, and then we were fine. And then we all got excited about leaving. And coming back was very smooth. And I was traveling with people, and then I lost them at the airport by mistake, so I didn't get to say goodbye to them properly. But and then I was just on a Ryanair flight back after all the after the ecstasy, the
Ryanair flight.
yeah, selling me lottery tickets,
Yeah.
But it's been good being back, and it's been quite challenging as well in a certain kind of way, because on the retreat there was a very clear sense of purpose. You were there for people, you were there to serve the retreat, you were there to help people, you were there to befriend people, you were there to practice together. In a way, as the longer the retreat went on, the more we just became people practicing together, order members practicing together. And I missed that clarity of purpose, I have to say. Coming back to being online and not getting to meet people and lockdown and all that, it was quite challenging, actually. And I found it took me quite a long time to re-engage again with life fully. Yeah. I feel like it's only really now that I feel fully engaged again, actually, after a couple of months.
And what about the other guys, like particularly the guys who were ordained? Have you heard from them? How are they getting on?
Yeah, we had a lovely meeting on Zoom a week or so ago, and it's classic. Some of them are doing really, really well, and some of them are just having a very difficult time. Just one guy who came back, and his community where he lived has dissolved. They've all fallen out with each other, and he's a bit depressed. And then there's other guys who are just as well as they've ever been. And in fact, actually, they're better since they've kind of in Guhiloka. I did wonder how they get on, but they've been far better than I've expected, actually. So it's very hard to tell. And something like ordination, my ordination was in 2007. And I still feel it's rippling through my life and having, it's playing out, and I still don't understand it. And I think for those guys, it's going to take at least 6 months to a year for that energy that's been released. It's a huge release of energy in your psyche. And I think it's going to take quite a while for that to kind of settle down and for them to discover who they are, actually. And, I see it as well with Prasanadeva and Vajrashura. They're still not going back from their retreat. So, you've pursued this thing for quite a number of years and you've put loads of energy into it. And then there's this huge energy release. And it does take a while to find out who you are then after, So they're all going through that, actually. But I think they're on the whole doing very well, actually. I think we train people very well these days. And we support them after ordination as well.
Yeah, wonderful. So you'll be having a follow-up retreat, will you, with the guys?
Yeah, so myself and Vajrashura and Prasanadeva and all the men ordained last year. That's about I don't know, probably about 40 or 50 people men ordained last year. We're all going to be, well, as many of us as can make it will be in Padmaloka in July, and I'll be on the team leading that retreat, where I think we're going to focus on sadhana, the visualization practices that we do as a theme for that. We're currently organizing it between us, actually, at the moment. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's great. And we're going to continue on our course with Zoom meetings every couple of months just to check in as well.
Oh, lovely. Okay, with all the lads that were there with you. Yeah, very, very good.
Yep.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much for a real feeling of kind of brightness that came from you. A sense of the sort of sparkling nature of the experience, the kind of diamond nature of it, in particular. So, what I wanted to do now is maybe actually what we'll do is just see if anyone's got any questions. I've asked a few, but I'm aware there's a good few other people present. So I just want to throw it open. You can just feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have a question.